Hello, it's Amy, and I'm back again with the Journal of Emily Shore. Today we are beginning on page 238 of the 1891 edition, and we are beginning with the entry for February the 2nd, 1838. And if you recall from the last entry, we had an editor's note in brackets, which says, "Here comes a story of grief, the news of the death of a beloved friend." So my assumption is that will follow in some of these next few entries. So February 2nd, Friday. How could Papa bear it as he did? It is wonderful, for I believe he has lost in Benjamin more than all of us have. It is a loss nothing can replace. Nothing. We have talked of little else all day. Our thoughts are, oh dear, I cannot write. I cannot compose my ideas. I ought to have taken example from the extraordinary firmness and self-possession of my father, but I could not. I wept till I was weary with weeping, and till night, never and anon my tears burst forth and would flow. I went to bed and thought, as I extinguished my candle and found myself in darkness and silence, we have one friend less in this world. February 3rd, Saturday. When we returned to Mamma's room, I was struck with the silence, only Papa speaking, as he said in a tone that quivered, and with a look of unutterable misery. As for me, there were one or two people in the world whom I cared about, and I have lost one who is more than a brother to me, and whom nothing can ever replace. February 22nd, Thursday. I finished The Fair Maid of Perth. Dwyning is overdone. He is too intensely wicked, too exquisitely horrible for possibility. He is the portrait of a fiend, not a mortal. One cannot enter into or remotely imagine his feelings, and therefore one does not watch his villainy with that sort of interest one usually feels in the progress of crime. The Ducksworths are going to town in about a week. We shall miss them much, for they are the only neighbours we like, and we do like them extremely. February 26, Monday. The Adventures of a Younger Son is a very amusing book. It is hardly a novel, but a slightly connected series of rambling adventures with descriptions of scenery and sketches of savage nations in various parts of Asia, threaded together on a very slender string of story. What amuses me exceedingly is that in the plan, the style of many parts, some of the incidents, and especially the character of the hero, it bears a most striking resemblance to my own tale, Devereux. In reading many parts, I could hardly believe that I had not myself written them. There is more of the story and of character in mine, but mine is much shorter, though I doubt whether it will be when finished. Were I ever to publish Devereux, nobody would believe that it was not a grossly servile imitation of The Adventures of a Younger Son. February 27th, Tuesday. For the last few days we have received the Morning Herald or Morning Post from Lord Tynemouth to acquaint us with his progress in the election for Marylebone. Now going forward. March 3rd. The post brought Papa a letter and two newspapers. These last we instantly opened and eagerly examined. But they only gave us the state of the poll down to 3 o'clock. While we were trying to find it, it was perceived that the letter, which had been thrown down disregarded, was from Charlotte Shore, Lord Tynemouth's sister. I am not franked. Or it was not franked, rather. And I'm not sure what it was not franked means. It was not franked. Perhaps that means it was not, sent by express post. Because then they say, then that settles it, says Papa. He's not elected. Mamma broke the seal, and there were but 2 lines. My dear Tom, all's well. Charles is member for Marylebone. Then came delight and exultation. We are highly pleased, though Lord Tynemouth's politics are not exactly ours, as he is a conservative, a very moderate and liberal one. However, but what is of most importance is that he is a man of the highest principle and the strictest honour and integrity. So now Papa has 2 first cousins in the House of Commons. March 4th. A letter from Lord Tynemouth. It was his first frank, and in a few hurried words announced the triumph of the Conservative cause. First frank. So maybe that means something else. Maybe it's not express post at all. Maybe it has something to do with the specific method or mark, or mailing opportunity available to MPs at this time in history. But either way, it's something to do with the way it seems to be sent in post, the way it's marked or something that is important to the Shore family. Moving on, March 5th, Monday. A letter from Henry Warren, dated Poole, informed us that he hoped to see us today, which surprised us not a little. He made his appearance at the hall door about 2 o'clock, wrapped in a great coat which rather disguised his handsome face. I hardly knew whether to be glad or sorry. To see him, hear him, and talk to him did most forcibly remind me of past times and old scenes in Devonshire, when I little thought I should see him here. I was much pleased at being able to introduce him to Mamma and my sisters. I was also very glad that he made a favourable impression on them, as indeed he does everywhere, and no wonder. For some other reasons his coming rather annoys me and very much surprises me too. But let that pass. He is a very pleasant guest, and his company, during the couple of days he proposes to spend here, will be agreeable to all. March 6, Tuesday. Our conversation at dinner turned to the New Forest roads and thence to Calcutta roads, the country about Calcutta, where Mr. Warren has been. Tigers, tiger hunts, Indian affairs, Indian trade, and the East India Company and the slave trade, on which a great deal of very interesting conversation passed between Papa and Mr. Warren. March 7th, Wednesday. Mr. Henry Warren left us early this morning, returning to Poole and to the revenue cutter on board which he had accepted the situation of first mate. He has spent most of his time since in cruising off the British coast. This led him into our neighbourhood by bringing him to Poole. March 12th, Monday. There was a sort of fairy beauty in the scenery of the lovely forest. The blue sky glowed through the delicate embroidered veil of the leafless sprays with extraordinary lustre. The lights and shades, the variety of tints and distances, the purity of the atmosphere I have never seen surpassed. My heart quite abounded with delight as we roved from one glade to another, and every minute discovered new beauties in each. We very soon got into a succession of glades and thickets quite new to us, although so close to the house, and we ran about shouting to each other, sometimes plunging in a shady hollow, sometimes standing on a grassy ride or terrace and looking down on commons gleaming with sunshine and embedded in wood. Sometimes following the course of a little rugged winding stream, now dark in shadow, now sparkling in the sunbeams. Sometimes looking down long bright vistas, varied with endless forms of fantastic foliage. Numbers of pretty yellow butterflies were flying about in all directions. The deer were grazing in the healthy openings of half hidden among the trees. The deep calm was interrupted only by the coal tits answering one another, the clear, joyous notes of the ox eye, the soft warble of the robin, and the occasional song of thrush, hedge sparrow, and chaffinch. March 17, Saturday. At dinner, talking of the weather and late and early seasons, led to the Hawthorn, thence very naturally to Glastonbury, thence to the body of King Arthur there deposited. Then a long talk about King Arthur and the authorities for his existence, then the body of Edward I in Westminster Abbey, then Shakespeare's dust at Stratford-on-Avon. This suggested Warwick and its castle, and lastly followed a long conversation about Battle Abbey and the Websters. March 29, Thursday. On returning, I stepped into the garden and took a peep at the little family with which my rabbits, whom I have named Vincent and Worski, have presented me. There I saw them wrapped in such a quantity of fur that I think Worski must have half stripped herself in behalf of her young ones, a singular instinct of nature. And I think we'll leave it there today because that takes us to the end of March, and almost 10 minutes in here. When we come back for the next entry, we will read the entries for April of 1838. Thank you for joining me and listening to these readings.